Hello students. Today we're talking about the fundamentals of speaking to inform. This corresponds with chapter 13. What I want to focus on are the three goals of speaking to inform. It's so important when you do anything, but especially when you are given a speech, to begin the process with the end in mind. You have to know what you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise the speech is likely to ramble. If you don't know what you're trying to talk about, what you're trying to get across, what you're trying to accomplish, then the audience will know that you don't know, and they will wonder why they're listening. So there are three things you're trying to accomplish when you're giving an informative speech. You want to be understood, you want to maintain the audience's interest, and you want to be remembered. Those are the three things that every informative speaker is trying to accomplish. And there are some strategies for accomplishing those things. So first, the speaker wants to be understood, and he or she wants to increase the audience's understanding of the topic. That would be one of the most obvious and important reasons for giving the speech in the first place. In the real world, speeches are only given because they're necessary, or because there's some audience demand for the information to be delivered. When you are giving such a speech, it's important to use the principles of adult learning. When you are teaching adults, it is called andragogy, the art and science of teaching adults, whereas when you are teaching children, it's called pedagogy. And actually, there's lots of spillover between the two, but teaching adults is significantly different from teaching children in lots of ways too. It's more important when you're teaching adults that you need to connect to their prior knowledge, find out what they already know, activate those things. You can activate their interest that way too, and that way you're able to build on what they already know. You also want to make sure that you relate your information to your listeners' lives. They are adults, they are busy, they need to know why they should listen. They need to know how what you're saying adds value to their life, how what you're saying meets a need that they have. Otherwise, why should they listen? Finally, you want to try to make it active in some way. You talk about something that relates to solving a problem, because that's something that people have to do every day. These things they're important in pedagogy, teaching children as well, but in some cases less so. For example, it's important to connect to a child's previous knowledge, but in some cases, children have less previous knowledge, obviously, than an adult might have. So if you do those things, you are more likely to end the speech having actually affected the goal of helping the audience understand something new, because you've tried to connect with them in ways that their demographics demands. In some ways, all informative speeches are exercises in teaching. So when you're speaking to inform, you are wearing the hat of the teacher, and you have to use some of the teaching strategies involved with andragogy. Next, you want to hold the audience's interest and attention. This is, I think, one of the hardest of all, because oftentimes when you're a speaker, you are not an entertainer. You are trying to get a point across, and you really have a hard time competing when you're giving a speech with all of the other data that's constantly streaming in to people's heads through their phones, through their environments. So you're competing with a lot. The data that they're trying to take in is ever expanding, and the attention spans are ever shrinking. So it's very hard to maintain interest, but of course it's necessary if you want to actually get any information into their heads. Some strategies for doing this: sometimes you want to use the unexpected. If you can, like, use some, I don't know, loud noise, open your speech in a unconventional way, that will kind of jar people out of their complacency and make them pay attention. That's what we're trying to get them to do. Sometimes it helps if you tell a story. You can draw people in emotionally if you kind of paint a picture of a particular person who's trying to overcome some particular adversity. People get more into stories with characters than they do if you're talking about something abstract and cerebral, even though you can get the point across either way. And finally, it helps to be up front, give a compelling preview statement at the beginning so that so that the audience knows I want you to listen, and this is why. This is what we'll be talking about, and this is why it's important. Okay, I think that holding interest is one of the most interesting elements of speaking to inform, because if you can manage to actually have someone's interest for any period of time, you have an enormous amount of influence over that person. In some ways, it's like mind control, because if you suggest something, people are really open to suggestion often, and if you tell them to think about something, they will. For example, the joke is, try not to think about a pink elephant, and everyone's thinking about a pink elephant. Whatever the speaker says affects the whole audience. That's an enormous responsibility and power, and it's why public speaking can be so powerful. But like I said, it's the hardest of the three goals: maintaining interest. So the first one was to increase understanding and to be understood. The second one is to increase interest, to hold interest and to hold attention. Finally, you also want to be remembered. You don't want the speech to just stay in the minds of the people during the speech, otherwise it's not effective. It has to stay with them as they go away from wherever you gave the speech. A couple of ways to be remembered. First, redundancy or repetition. You want to say the same thing more than once, because repetition is the key to learning. If you just say something once, it'll go in one ear and out the other. But if you say it a couple of times, then they're more likely to remember it. You'll notice in this video, I will say what I'm going to say at the beginning, then I'll go through it in the body, and then in the conclusion I repeat those three things that I wanted to say at the end. And that's what I suggest you do in your speeches as well. And the reason for that is redundancy, repetition. You're trying to be remembered, so you say the same thing more than once. It's not that you want to ramble or be unorganized, but in a very disciplined, organized way, you repeat the information even as you present it in a well-planned manner. You also want to pace the flow of information. Information overload is the enemy of retention. If you spit out a bunch of statistics and a bunch of numbers, they're all just going to fly right over people's heads, even though independently they might have been very powerful statistics. So keep it short, keep it simple. I also suggest that you follow the rule of threes. If you can break things up into 3 points, then people, for some reason, they remember those things pretty well. They're like catchier. Faith, hope, and love, honor, duty, country. I came, I saw, I conquered. You could look this up on the internet and find like thousands of classic examples of the rule of threes in literature and in culture. For some reason, we like things chunked up into three points, easier to remember, fit into a slogan. And so if you're trying to be remembered, chunk it up into 3 parts. That's why I suggest 3 main points, by the way. And finally, just follow the structure that I've recommended with the introduction, body, and conclusion, because that is built to be to aid in memory. Okay, in conclusion, we have talked about the 3 goals of speaking to inform. If your speech is well constructed and it follows the principles that the book outlines and that I've been teaching, then you're likely to meet these 3 goals, which are to help the audience understand something they did not understand before, to hold the audience's interest while you are teaching them, and finally, to help the audience remember what you said long after you have finished saying it. Some of the best speeches I've heard, as far as student speeches go, I can still remember them semesters later, just because of some unconventional thing they did in the introduction, or some particular turn of phrase that they had the wisdom to repeat several times, so that stuck in my memory. So again, a successful informative speech does these particular goals. I hope that you specifically aim at them as you put your speech together, and I look forward to seeing what you have to offer. All right, that concludes our video for today. I'll see you next time.